It gives me a lot of pleasure to introduce our next presenter. Stefan has been sort of at the forefront alongside me right from the beginning of the campaign and through Prof. The tyre industry, colleagues of ours in the rescue and recovery industry. And we've got much common ground in terms of training and in terms of safety. I was given the honour about 2 years ago before lockdown to address the NTDA National Conference, and I'm immensely proud to reciprocate that honour to Stefan to present the NTDA. Stefan Hay, but I had a mental block for a second.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you everybody for allowing me this opportunity to be with you today. I took a lot of pleasure listening to Mark in terms of his presentation this morning, because like the IVR, we are a not-for-profit organisation. Like the IVR, we are funded by our members. Like the IVR, we're a very small team based in Aylesbury. If it wasn't for volunteers and our executive officers and even honorary members who retired still participating in the work of the association, we couldn't achieve what we have achieved. And that's why partnerships are so important to us. So I applaud you for your work, because I can totally relate to it. And it's fantastic to hear that you're making such great progress. The other connection is, of course, our guys, they're now faced with having to repair electric vehicles. And it's like, oh, what am I working on here? And gone are the days of mechanics. It's interesting watching some of the volunteers walking around working on vehicles outside, because those are proper mechanics out there. Because our guys these days are technicians. They are working on highly technical, advanced driver assistance systems, electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles now as well coming into play. So it's an interesting time that we're living in. So I'd like to start really by providing some background as to how I find myself here today. So since 1930, the NTDA has campaigned, should I say, not only for improved consumer tyre safety, but also for the safety of those individuals employed in our industry, and especially those working at the roadside. They're working just like you are, as VROs, in very precarious conditions, in all weathers, any time of day. And as you can see from this picture here, this is one of our commercial tyre technicians' vans. It was responding to a tyre blowout on the highways maintenance vehicle in front, and basically on a completely clear road, which was empty really of other traffic. It was rear shunted on the hard shoulder by an Eddie Stobart's truck, which had basically drifted onto the hard shoulder. We don't know why, we don't know if the driver was texting or snoozing or whatever, and luckily our technician was working a bit further up on this vehicle, and the vehicle's driver, who had been posted as a lookout, shouted, "Get on in the verge!" And that was it, the van got smashed up. And it was completely destroyed, as you can see. And sadly, up until 2007, news reports of tyre technicians being injured and killed at the roadside was, a frequent occurrence. And for us as an industry, the turning point actually came in 2007, when we lost 3 technicians pretty much back to back on the same stretch of road up in Scotland. And this was, the culmination of a very, very bad period of time between 1996 and 2007. So, this picture here, again in 2007, shows an ATS Euromaster response vehicle that was obliterated on the 17th of December 2007 near junction 17 of the M25. That, combined with what had been going on in Scotland, our industry just said, this cannot continue. This cannot continue. We've got vans, we've got clearly branded vans, we've got flashing lights. We need to train our technicians to be more aware, more situational aware. We need to train them in dynamic risk assessment. We need to make sure that other stakeholders within the industry understand what it is that people do. So it's precisely for this reason that we started to work, first of all, informally, to start pulling together companies that we knew would support this, whether it be the commercial tyre technician service providers, or the major manufacturers, or the companies requiring our services for fleet management, tyre fleet management. And we started to pull together a training process, assessment process for practical assessment, And in 2011, so it did take quite a long time, we formally launched REACT, which is the Roadside Emergency Action Concerning Tyre Technician Scheme. So currently there are circa 500 companies participating in the scheme. And I have to say, not all of them are NTDA members. We also have non-members who are heavily involved in the scheme. The training providers, very diverse range really of training providers, but we have the training centres of Bridgestone, Central Tyre, Continental, Michelin, Halfords Auto Centres, recent new member to the scheme, Roadside Safety Training, which is an independent, and many, many more. And touch wood, since 2011, since the formalisation of the scheme and the official launch, we have had no reports of REACT-trained commercial tyre technicians being killed or injured at the roadside. Now, going back to before we introduced the scheme and the frequency with which we had deaths and injuries, that I think is the greatest achievement of the scheme, the fact that we're not losing technicians. The chairman of REACT for many years was the training manager of Bridgestone, now retired, a gentleman called Phil First. Some of you I know actually know Phil from Survive and from other groups. And I'd like to quote something that he said, because he has also always been very clear about the need for REACT and why it doesn't need. Replacing commercial tyres at the roadside is a unique service that our industry provides, and it does it very well. But clearly it comes with its own huge and very unique risks. Employees in the tyre retail sector are investing heavily in REACT and the training to provide their technicians with best opportunities. More and more fleet operators today also require the technicians working on their vehicles to have a solid understanding of health and safety procedure, and to be equipped with the ability to practically and pragmatically apply their knowledge. We come back to pragmatism again. And Phil, even though he retired from Bridgestone, actually came back as a training provider because of the demand for REACT training within the industry. So, what does this involve? Well, all tyre technicians are taken away to training centres. They're trained against very strict training criteria, all based on the national occupational standards. Our occupational standards for this actually sit with the IMI, so yet another institute, but again, standard setting body on a par with what the IGR does. The training criteria is regularly reviewed. Most recently, and thanks to Colin and Stephen Bird and Wayne, it's been reviewed by Highways England to make sure that it's on a par with the requirements of Highways England as well. And will be amended to incorporate all of the new legislation, standards and best practice that comes to fore. Once the training has been completed, each technician is assessed, and if deemed competent, an application is then made to the NTDA for the official licence. If not deemed competent, technicians are referred for additional training and assessment. Now, you would think, wouldn't you, that people who've been working as commercial tyre technicians for years, and possibly working roadside for years, would come through the training and sail through the assessment. No. Because what we were finding in this process is that although they might have passed the elements which they had just been taught in terms of the working safely at the roadside, many of them had developed really bad bad traits in terms of the actual tyre fitting skills and tyre repair skills. Some of them took shortcuts, maybe for operational reasons. Some of them had just done it that way, and always done it that way. And of course we have the classic, and I'm sure you have it within your sector as well, well, I've always done it that way. Well, you've always done it wrong. So we then had to introduce another scheme, the licensed commercial tyre technician, to retrain people on how to be a safe commercial tyre technician before we could then get them going on the roadside. And we also had jokers, some companies sending fairly young technicians on the REACT training course, and this was to make sure that they could work safely at the roadside, on the strategic road network, and they didn't have driving licenses. Or they'd been banned from driving. So needless to say, they didn't pass the overall training and assessment program. But to date, more than 7,500 commercial tyre technicians have been trained, assessed as competent, and licensed across the UK. And many of them have reached the stage now where they've gone through refresher training and been re-licensed as well. And that's not just in the UK, we've also got this in the Republic of Ireland, mainly through the major manufacturers. But if we take into account that there are over 10,000 commercial tyre technicians working on the strategic road network every day, we're responding to incidents, you realise that 3/4 is a hell of an achievement since 2011, but we're not there yet. And that means that we've got at least 2,500 that we don't know about, we don't know what their skill sets are, we don't know if they're working safely, and this provides problems. And because this type of work, despite everything that's been put in place since 1930 by the NTDA, all of the training and assessment that's been introduced by REACT, despite all of that, it's still a low entry kind of role. You can get a tyre technician who's worked somewhere, who goes and buys a van, who gets it liveried up, gets the equipment with a load from somewhere, and suddenly, yes, I'm a commercial tyre technician. But they might never have been trained properly. They might never have been independently assessed by one of these qualified assessment companies, and certainly we have a license that we don't know about. And they're undermining our industry. And they're undermining the standards within our industry. And it is a grey area that we have a lot of concerns about. So we hold a national database, similar, I think, to other schemes that are in place with IVR. And it's a photo license, it's valid for 5 years, and it's subject to renewal following the refresher training and assessment that I mentioned. And certainly, I know Derek's been chasing me, but I need to chase Derek because I know that you've developed an app-based. It's up, the IVR has, yeah. Derek sort of approached me on this. Yes, but I need to talk to you guys, Mark, about whether or not we can look at something similar. Because I think in the age of smart technology now, it would be great for our technicians to have something that they can show. Now, the primary reason we wanted to do that is that we still have a lot of companies who, for some reason, hold on to the licenses, despite the fact that the rules of our scheme clearly state that technicians must have the license at all times. Some companies hold on to it as some sort of, you will stay with us, because we don't believe in going off somewhere else with your qualification. But we say to them, it is the individual's card, they've done the training, they've done the assessment. So if you've got a smart version of it, we can just send them, then great. And we celebrate this. This is a big thing for us. Our REACT commercial tyre technicians are those roadside heroes that Richard has spoken about. We work alongside you guys, and we're brothers and sisters in arms at the roadside. And every year at our awards, and certainly Derek and others that come to our award ceremony, we applaud the top tier of those technicians, and every year we have a REACT Technician of the Year award. And it's such a great thing to actually meet the technicians and to hear their stories, because I couldn't do it. And I know a lot of you are VROs, a lot of you have worked roadside, and perhaps you progress through the ranks, so you can talk with passion about it. But I listen to some of their stories, and it scares the hell out of me. And what drove this home for me, and one of the reasons that we support the worshipful company Wheelwright's charity, which does a lot of work with wheel power, the wheelchair charity, is that I went to, with my former chairman, I went to Stoke Mandeville Stadium for the interspinal unit games. And this is for people who've been injured or have an illness which has put them in a wheelchair. And it wasn't set up at all. I could go anywhere I want, I could talk to anybody I want, I could go to any sort of sport, but I used to play and coach rugby, so I'm a passionate rugby man. So I went to watch the wheelchair rugby. And it scared the bejesus out of me, because they're a lot tougher than normal rugby players. They just smash into each other, and the chairs are flying, and the tyres are coming off, and quite a scary thing to watch. And I said to this guy afterwards, "Are you worried about getting injured?" He went, "No, mate, I'm a paraplegic, so I can't feel it anyway." The jewel in the crown, the rising star. Because I thought to myself, you know what, we'd be stronger together. And that was in late December 2018, and I met Richard at the IVR's offices in January 2019, and I thought, yes, this is somebody who speaks my language, this is somebody I can relate to, this is somebody I want to work with. So we became involved with the campaign first of all, and became a sponsor in January 2019. I attended the launch in February 2019. I then spoke, thank you, at the IVR conference, thanks to Mary and the team there. That was a great event as well, and again I met a lot of really enthusiastic, passionate people. And then I participated in the APPG, and I remember sending lots of pictures of obliterated vans at the roadside, because I've been asked, can you show any evidence of how dangerous it is for your guys? How much do you need? So that was a great thing. And then, of course, we supported the red light campaign because my members, like your members, said, well, it's a no-brainer that we get involved with this and raise awareness. And in fact, many of my members wrote out to their local constituency MPs, and I think we had 28 MPs from different parties across the UK say, and in fact, I have power vote times what he said, it's a no-brainer. That was how people responded to that. And then, as Richard said, he spoke at our conference, and his presentation was actually legendary. People still talk to me about it now. What was that guy called who said about a muffin? Richard knows what I'm talking about. Ask him afterwards, because it was a very, very funny line, but it had 200 people at the conference rolling around the yard. And of course, we've had constant press activity on both sides promoting this. As you can see, we both crack on. We don't mess about, do we, Richard? No, we don't. But then this came. And suddenly the brakes were on for a while. Now, COVID proved to be a really interesting time for our industry. The roadside guys, the commercial tyre technicians, they actually saw an increase in work in some areas, and certainly most of the operators were running around 85%, Martin?
Yeah,
85%, because suddenly more supermarkets, trucks on the road, more deliveries on the road. So from HGV all the way through to van, it was busy, and the demand increased. But on the retail centre side of things, we saw a dip. And there was a big reason for that. It was called the MOT suspension. 6 months MOT suspension, suddenly people weren't bringing in their vehicles, no one was checking out their vehicles, therefore there was no upselling opportunity for the depots, because we weren't telling people that their tyres were below the legal limits, and we weren't telling them that one of their lights was out and that the brakes weren't working properly. So suddenly we were faced with, what do we do? So about 30% of my members closed up, furloughed staff, the others kept going. And those that kept going said, we're glad we did it, because then they suddenly saw an increase, believe it or not, in emergency vehicles. Whether it was ambulances, or police cars, or doctors and nurses, paramedics bringing their vehicles saying, oh, I'm glad you're open. My local garage is closed. So that was an interesting development for us. But it also allowed those who remained open to really think about safety of customers, how to set up the working environment for staff. We've learned some fantastic best practices from that, which has allowed us to put together the basis of a safe tyre centre scheme, which we launched a couple of weeks ago. And on top of that, we did some research, independent research, with our members. We benchmarked against other industries, and we interviewed over 2,000 motorists across the UK saying, what do you expect to see post-restrictions in a tyre centre? And they told us they still wanted hand sanitizer. They preferred having the technician sat behind a screen when booking their vehicles. They still wanted seat covers. They still wanted the technicians to wear gloves, handing over keys, etc., etc. So that's what we stuck with. So it was quite interesting that people wanted freedom, surely, but they quite liked knowing that things were being cleaned properly and it was all safe. Other things we experienced: furloughed staff, people feeling a bit uncertain about the future. We lost them. Master technician level. We were losing people left, right and centre. Going off to work for Amazon Delivery, or in the Amazon Distribution Centre, or some other delivery company. Do you know why? Because we valued our technicians so much at master technician level that they get £5 an hour more at Amazon to drive a delivery van and drop parcels off. Brilliant. And then the economics started to change in our world as well. Suddenly we saw an increase in people buying part-worn tyres. I've been made redundant. I'm only getting 80% of my money, I'm going to go and buy some part-worn tyres. They're only a tenner down the road. It doesn't matter that they're 19 years old and not nailed. I can afford them. We had shortages. Shortages of tyres, shortages of equipment. Brexit screwed things up for us, certainly with Northern Ireland, the Northern Ireland Protocol, as did COVID. Container loads of goods sat in ports, unable to get them out to be delivered. We had a very legendary situation where containers of government procured PPE, which was deemed unsuitable, was blocking in 300,000 tyres being also bought. And then we had the situation where essentially, we didn't know from one day to another if we were in restrictions or out of restrictions, like you know, it's just constant fluctuation. But we got through it, and certainly, for those of you who know Richard Goddard, I take it you all know it, you know that pandemic isn't going to hold him back. He'd been working behind the scenes, and he was further in the course. He was also checking in on me when I wasn't very well last year, so thanks, mate. And he was negotiating not only on behalf of the recovery industry, but it also made approaches to Highways England for the tyre industry, considering us his partner. And he facilitated the first meeting with the colleagues from Highways England, and that allowed me to then work with Nick and Colin and the others in the team to negotiate this equivalent agreement that's been spoken about today. Do you know, I am therefore really delighted to have been invited to be here today and to share this with you today and to listen to the interesting speakers. It's great to be at the inaugural PROFCon. I hope you have many, many more. I hope that it grows and becomes the leading industry event that it deserves to be. I'm proud to be working alongside all of you and working alongside Richard, because together we are making our people safer. And there can be no doubt, together we are stronger. Thank you.